Mr. Chairman and Colonel O'Connor, I appreciate the opportunity to meet with you yesterday and thought we had a good discussion. I want to also mention that how much I and I know others respect your service in the Marine Corps and what you did there, 3 decades. I think it's clear what you just said. You know, the Marine Corps wouldn't be putting up with not even a minuscule amount of what goes on at the VA. People would be fired like that, and you know that as well as I do. So there's a frustration level here, and I think you're seeing it on the committee. But, you know, as you and I talked about, I mean, I was home in Alaska just last weekend and had a Vietnam corpsman, had an opportunity to talk to him. He used to work at the VA, served his country with the Marines, patched up, probably saved a lot of Marines' lives. And this is the first thing he talked to me about, this lack of accountability. And he was even a VA employee. So it just goes well beyond the committee here. I mean, these are constituents of mine raising the lack of accountability issue. I think it goes to the ultimate issue that we all know needs to happen, which is rebuilding the trust between the VA and our veterans. So I really think Senator Bozeman's line of questioning is actually a really, really important line of questioning, because what the Secretary's doing, in my view, is starting to lay out a dangerous precedent. And to kind of have the Congress say, here's what we're going to do, and have him say, without even having the law challenged. It's one thing to take it all the way and have someone challenge it and go to court and then the court overturn it. But to just say, Attorney General thinks it's not going to hold water, so we're never going to use this law, that is a dangerous precedent without any limiting principle. Any executive can do that on anything. And this administration has been very, very roughshod with the rule of law, in my view, and this is just another example. I think it's a very, very dangerous precedent. So count me as somebody who thinks that that's not the discretion that the Secretary should have, and it's certainly not the discretion that the Attorney General should be providing the VA. You need to take the law to its max extent, use it, and if it's overturned in a court, then we should have the discussion. But it's very frustrating. But let me give you a little bit more of a context of why it's frustrating from the position you're in. If you're going to do something that major, when you, the VA, know that this committee has been so focused on this accountability issue, and then you're just going to do it, and the chairman and the ranking member read about it like I did in Stars and Stripes in Military Times, that is a failure on the part of the congressional liaison offices. We should not, if there's a major change in policy, we should not be reading about it in the newspaper. Do you have any comment on that?
I think we could have done it differently and done it better.
What would you have done differently?
Given the reaction, we would hopefully address the issue to the committee before it was ever presented to the public in any way, shape, or form.
I think that's absolutely you should have done that. And not just given the reaction, that's not the reason you should do that. If you're trying to change policy that this committee in the Congress of the United States has passed and you're trying to unilaterally change it, and you're going to do that, I think you need to come to the chairman and the ranking member and the rest of this committee and thoroughly, thoroughly brief us on why you're going to do that before it gets announced in the press and we're all blindsided by it, and our constituents are reading yet another story where it seems like the VA doesn't take accountability seriously. Can you commit to doing that if you're confirmed?
I do commit, confirmed. We answered a request for information on this. We should have done it differently. I think if hindsight being 20/20, if we went back, we would not do it the same way. And we're very much aware of the frustration that we created by doing it in that manner.
Mr. Chairman, may I have time for one more question? So another area where I think there's been frustration, and it's I think among all members, is the responsiveness of the VA, where a lot of offices, I know mine included, we make requests and then we wait and we wait, And then we're always trying to proactively say, hey, any luck on this request? No. Any luck on this request? No. And it seems like we're the ones always reaching out. And I think that that can be reversed. If you know that there's an interest of the committee members on requests that we've had, you should be proactively reaching out to us. And even if you don't have the information, hey, we know this is important to you, Mr. Chairman, but we don't have it yet, but we're on it, right? I think that would breed a lot more trust just between the committee and the VA, because just from this committee's records, in the last couple months, it's taken 3 months for the VA to answer a routine question, 49 days for the VA to tell the committee that they do not have a policy requiring doctors performing compensation exams and provide copies of their resumes to the veterans being examined if the veteran requests it. I have a whole list, and I'm going to submit them for the record, where the committee was asking questions, and it was taking any time from 3 months to 6 months for the VA to get back. And these are not big questions. They're pretty routine questions. So could you commit to, and maybe you can comment on the issue of responsiveness to this committee? Because ultimately, it's not only our questions of policy, it's questions of cases that involve America's veterans. And at the end of the day, we need to get back to making sure our veterans have the trust and confidence in the VA, and taking forever to answer questions doesn't build that trust and confidence.
Yes, sir. I will commit to doing things differently because, as I mentioned earlier, one of the key things from my experience working in Marine Corps Ledge Affairs was the open lines of communications and the way we would interface with congressional offices. Much like you said, there were often times where we would just say, we have a problem, we'll get back to you. And in fact, because of our relationships, that was good enough, and there were no negative comments, and we were able to.
But that's not happening right now with the VA.
Well, but that's where we want to get to. And that's why I still want to do this job, because I believe getting there is extraordinarily important to build better relationships between Congress and VA. You know, when talking to your staff, I mean, we are getting there. The people we're hiring, the people who work in the office now understand, and they are doing a good job of having that communications. And I've empowered them to have those open lines of communications, and not to, you don't have to run things all the way through chains of command. You've got to be able to interface. And the key thing that I mentioned, and I will reiterate, when we do run into problems, we have to alert people we're having problems. There are delays, and to give some expectation of when somebody can expect something, and not just, we're working on it, and there's got to be something better and more concrete than that.
Well, I think if you do that, those would be very important reforms that we would all welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.